Good morning, America. Another bright day, a lot happening out there and in the news and elsewhere. And just want to welcome you and thank you for watching Guardian or Taxes Made Easy here on the smartmoneyculture.tv. And thank you if you're watching live on rebroadcast. Today we've got an interesting show, a little bit different, but we're going to be focusing on a speech that the IRS Commissioner gave all about the future of the IRS. Now, we're not talking 10, 20 years in the future. We're talking the next couple of years. Where is the IRS heading? Where are they putting their emphasis, their efforts? And how is that going to affect you as a taxpayer? So I'm excited about this episode. It's a little different, but we're going to be parsing through and going through a speech that the IRS Commissioner just gave. And a lot of this isn't new news, but a lot of it is very helpful in understanding where is the IRS going and how do I deal with it. Welcome back, everybody. Before we get into the commissioner's speech, a couple very crazy things happened, and it affects real people. If you are in these areas, it's going to be a cause for a lot of confusion. And so last night at 1:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a bridge collapsed. So this article is from Breitbart News. And a cargo ship, I'm going to go ahead and just share this. Help if I... cargo ship hit a bridge, Baltimore Bridge, causing it to collapse. 1.6 mile Baltimore Bridge. Again, this is scary. 20 cars were sent into the water over the Patapsco River. So if you, this is from I-695 from the mouth of the Baltimore Harbor. So again, the Key Bridge. If you're in this area, if you know anybody, again, that was driving very late around 1:30 at night, again, they said it was a blessing in that there were only 20 cars, because usually the bridge just minutes earlier was much busier than this. But it appears that there was a power outage on the cargo ship, and it lost all of its lights, probably lost of its steering, and then lights started coming back, and then it crashed into one of the supporting piers and caused a huge section of the bridge to fail. So again, just be aware, pray for those that are in this situation. Again, this is a pretty devastating thing to happen, to have a bridge collapse like this. So there's a lot of information in this article about it. I'm sure others are going to show. Here's the Francis Scott Key Bridge from Hawkins Point over to Delaware, I believe. So if this affects you, watch out for these, because when you have issues like this, events like this, the IRS usually issues a disaster alert. If this affects your commute, losing a bridge like this could be a huge problem. And one of the issues here is I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing this article. And the reason why I share it is when you have natural disasters, emergencies like this, the IRS will frequently offer a break. So they'll extend filing deadlines. They will give you breaks on penalties and interest. So in another news article that just came out, there are mudslides in Alaska. So severe storms, landslides, and mudslides in Alaska. And again, this is something that's local to that area. This is the Wrangell Cooperative Association of Alaska tribal nation. So it affected an Indian tribe up there. But this happens regularly throughout the country. When you do have disasters, There's frequently relief from the IRS on filing deadlines, penalties and interest, etc. The thing is, when this does happen, take advantage of it, get on it, because these extensions don't last forever. They gave them until July to file, so another 2 months actually. May, June, July, 3 months. But it affects people. When there's disasters, the IRS and the government does try to respond. And so the last article that I want to talk about, piece of news out there today, dovetails nicely with what we just talked about the other day with homeowner rates going through the roof. And this is an article from CNBC. I'm going to go ahead and share it. There's not a lot of information in the article itself, but they have a video that goes along with it. And again, it goes through a lot of different reasons why. The video talks about it more. So again, just talk about why auto rates are going up. Nationally, they're up 26% increase. In some states, New Jersey, it's up 45%. So the example that they use in their video, if you want to watch more, you can click on the video. It's a 12-minute video. But it goes into more detail as to why the different reasons, and there's multiple reasons as to why rates are going up. But again, there's that 20%, 26% number from the previous year. Longer repair times, more expensive rental car costs. Some of the other reasons in here, more accidents from an average of 3.8 million in 2019 to 6.1 in 2021. What's changed in those years? COVID and increased phone usage. So texting, calling, all of that stuff on phones has been one factor in increased accidents, fatalities. Again, it's pretty scary. So again, this is a huge market again, valued at $353 billion. It's required to carry car insurance, but I want to kind of walk through some of these things to help people understand how to save money and improve their financial situation. So when do you have higher car insurance? If you're financing a vehicle, but more so if you're leasing a vehicle. So that's one thing that was news to me, that you have higher rates when you're leasing a vehicle. And that's because the insurance company has a greater interest in the vehicle. So when you're done with it, the vehicle goes back to them, and so they'll require higher insurance rates on top of that. So some of the reasons for the massive increases we've been seeing, supply chain issues, inflation, all of it post-COVID, all the economic issues that we've seen post-COVID, they're still working their way through their economy and driving prices up across the board. And it's affecting financial institutions. The other day we talked about how State Farm stepped out of the California market and canceled, I believe it was 76,000 policies or something like that. And it's just too expensive. The regulations are too high. The costs are going up too high. They can't keep up with them, and they're losing money. So what do you think? You have these giant, large corporations. Their stocks are going up and up and up. But that's because they're traditionally a safe place to invest money. They're increasing their rates like crazy, which is one of the reasons that currently the stocks are going up. But in 2022, they took on average a 12% loss. A 12% loss for a business is huge. In the last 6 or 7 years, the best gain was 7%. So this is them looking at their cost of business plus the cost of paying out claims in a ratio to the amount of premiums they get. So if they're paying out more than 100% to run their business and for all the claims, they're losing money. And businesses can't operate like that. Most insurers, they don't make money on the premiums. They make money off of investing on the premiums. So when the stock market suffers, it hurts financial companies, institutions like insurances even more. So just want to kind of round up some of the reasons why they had is, for the increase in costs. Another big reason, the increased use of marijuana. So if don't drink it or don't drive and be high. It's still driving under influence. It's caused for a lot of accidents out there. And so, again, we've had a lot of states, Arizona included, where I am, that have approved and legalized marijuana on the state level. It still causes massive, massive problems. If you want a security clearance, anything to do with the federal government, it's still illegal federally. But just as a public safety announcement, driving high puts you and others at risk. Anytime you're driving impaired, and one of the biggest impairments, even more, much higher on the list of driving impaired with marijuana, texting or phones. And we all see it. They're going 40 miles an hour in a 50-mile-an-hour zone. Everybody's zipping by them and honking their horns at them because they're mad at them. But when people are on their phones and driving distracted, so be safe out there, people. Here in Tucson, Arizona, there's plenty of complaints about increased road rage, increased frustration. There was a guy recently, I think he was shot. We all know incidents of road rage because people are driving distracted, they're driving angrier, they're being more aggressive in general. And so this is a national trend. And it's be safe out there, people. Take care of you and your family when out there driving on the roads. Okay, so we're going to pivot to this speech. And again, this was given yesterday. So this is IRS Commissioner Danny Werfel, 1 year after he took over the IRS. And again, this is a speech given at a university. But again, it's good to know, and this is why I wanted to cover this today. It's good to know, where is the IRS going? Where are they putting their efforts? How are they trying to improve services for you, the taxpayers? It's also important to know, again, it's a political speech. Anything from this high up, it's going to have a lot of politics in it. We're going to try to gloss over that part or just take it with a grain of salt. But this is the direction that the IRS is heading. So we're seeing I'm talking a lot about with the ERC claims, how they're coming down hard on there. They're increasing audits, and this is one of the emphasis that comes down from out in the speech. So it's really good. I think it's good information, and I think it's good information for taxpayers because there is some good information that's very helpful in it as well. And I'm going to highlight that part, some of the things that the IRS has done that is actually, I think, provided better service for taxpayers. And it's hit and miss, but I think there's a lot of good information as well. So I've got a jet flying overhead if you can't hear that. The joys of living next to an Air Force base. But again, we'll be back shortly to dive into this in depth, and I'll see you soon. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here on smartmoneyculture.tv, either live or on rebroadcast. And I probably have somebody thinking, oh, a speech by the IRS Commissioner. Oh my gosh, I should just go back to bed or go take a nap. We're going to make this interesting. And the reason it's interesting is because it affects you, the taxpayer. And I'm not going to go line by line, but just to give some background to it, it's not a bad speech. It's actually kind of interesting. Maybe that's the tax attorney speaking. But he gives it at a unique place, Kogod University or School of Business at American University. And I'm not even familiar with American University myself, but he cites it, and he said that when he kind of goes and channels NASA. So JFK went and spoke at American University to set up the space program. We're going to go to the moon. And he talks about in 2023, a group of NASA scientists fired a rocket at an asteroid that was 7 million miles away and hit it bullseye and changed the trajectory of the asteroid. So again, this is proving that if NASA had to, and if they could detect an asteroid that far out, they could deflect it and prevent it from hitting the Earth. One of these, we've all seen the movies of an asteroid coming to Earth. I think the last one, the big one, I forget the name of it, but it Armageddon, and it had all kinds of top name actors in it. But he talks about how is that affordable? How do they afford that? It's through the IRS. So again, kind of a little bit of a moment here talking about the importance of where he is, and he acknowledges that it's a very different world today than what we grew up with. And one of the biggest changes is the digital change. So they want to make the IRS accessible to us more digitally, phones, tablets, and to get away from paper. Do I think this is applaudable? In some ways, yes. In other ways, there's some room for caution here. Because a lot of people get left behind when you change things like this. Older generations, people that struggle using an all digital system, the blind in particular. And there's just a lot of people out there that they just are not comfortable with computers of every generation. So there is assistance out there. There are still tax professionals out there. Some of what they're doing I have issues with, but a lot of it I think is good. Good for you, good to understand where they're going and how it can help you. So he talks about when he first got the call to take over the IRS, the jaw dropped, and it's like, okay, you're giving me the job nobody wants. How do you turn around the IRS? And I think part of it, they want to make the IRS appear to be kinder, gentler, friendlier, even though it has such a horrible reputation. And this is where I'm going to inject my own opinion. A lot of this is hooey or smoke, because under this administration, the IRS has done anything to improve its customer service. They've been more aggressive across the board, especially going after the poor and indigent, which really bothers me. And I've talked at length about how this administration in particular has made it so much harder, where Democrat, Republican, prior to this, they made it easier. It didn't matter which party. They would tweak the IRS and make it a little bit easier to work with. And so some of this is just, they say one thing, but they're doing something else. Typical politics. One of the big things they talk about, though, is, and I think it's good that they want to update and improve the IRS. Believe it or not, every year around Christmas time, they take about a week and a half to 2 weeks to update their systems. And they have to do a massive update every year because their system is still based on DOS. People laugh every time I tell them that, but it's true. And again, they have this huge update. So talking about updating the IRS, I think that's great. Their systems crash all the time. They have lots of problems with their systems, and it affects customer service. Unfortunately, what I see is that the effort is not going into customer service. It's going to increase collections. So again, it's gotten harder and harder to deal and work with the IRS. But to acknowledge where they've come from, one of his points is that COVID threw a giant monkey wrench at the IRS. It absolutely did. They had shipping containers full of mail that nobody had gotten to. They went down to skeleton crew at first. They closed things down, and they were just taking forever to work through all of this massive paperwork. Huge backlogs. They have, I have to give them credit. They've gotten to a point where they are actually digging through this and making forward progress. And I think by and large, they're caught up with that backlog. of paperwork, of tax returns. Now when you submit a tax return, a new return, if you file it electronically, it can get processed in 2 to 3 weeks. It's very quick. Older returns can still take 5 to 6 months, sometimes longer. On more complicated returns, we're seeing where I have to bug the IRS and go after them and make sure, hey, this needs to be returned. Sometimes going a taxpayer advocate just to get a return. I had a client that had filed an original return after a substitute for return had been filed. So the IRS filed for them, and we were filing a replacement return, an original return, to back out that balance. Now, the issue in this case was they filed the substitute for return under the wife who had the money in this given year. They just filed it for her, but then they filed jointly with him as primary, her husband as primary, because that's how they always filed. And the IRS system, it took them about 18 months. We had to go to taxpayer advocate. We called and harassed the IRS to finally get someone to make this change. We finally got someone assigned through taxpayer advocate, and within a matter of weeks, they got a nice fat refund, which they were entitled to. But I mean, the big thing is that they had this huge tax burden hanging over their head. We had to protect them the whole time we were going through this. And so customer service still has a long way to go when it comes to the IRS. There are some ways that they have improved. So there's 3 main topics that he talks about. First of all, he wants to how they're using the new funding. He talked about how they're using the new funding. He's talked a lot about going digital, which I do see some improvements, and I do want to give the IRS credit where it's due. And then the third one, he wants to make the IRS more fair, which we'll touch on towards the end. And again, the pandemic threw a giant monkey wrench at it. But one of the things that maybe they're still catching up, maybe they're still figuring things out. Customer service and getting through the IRS, though, is harder than ever. Before the pandemic, you could call the IRS. You might sit on hold for an hour or so, but you would usually still get through eventually. Now it's 2 hours, if they even let you through. And sometimes you'll be on hold for 2 hours and then the line will drop. They have made some changes to try to address that, but the overall customer service, when you call into the IRS, is atrocious. It's gotten worse. Now, to be fair to the IRS, a lot of this is because of a brain drain at the IRS. Post-pandemic, a lot of people are like, this is ridiculous. I'm retiring. I'm done with this. I've done my 30 years. I put in my time. A lot of more experienced people there at the IRS left. And like any large organization, it is very difficult to replace experienced individuals. So their retirements accelerated and their level of experience across the board decreased. And they're still struggling with that. So a lot of your more senior experienced people have been put into training programs. They've been promoted and they have to go through training for that. So even though they're putting more people in, well, I don't know if they're putting more people in customer service. They say they're improving customer service all the time, but I don't see numbers to back it up. And I don't see the reality of working with the IRS. So that's one of the issues that, to be fair to the IRS, just might take time to get enough people trained to replace the brain drain that they have, through the pandemic, and to improve customer service. But the wait times are inexcusable. I mean, that's ridiculous today. I've never seen it this bad. Where most of the time when you call during the day, it's like, call us back another day. So the quick way to help with this, call the IRS between 5 and 7 p.m. and don't call on Monday or Tuesdays because that's when they're the busiest. But yeah, they're still open between 5 and 7 p.m. and most people don't know that. So he claims that there is faster tax processing. I think they're getting back to where they were as far as processing tax returns, but they still have a long way to go to actually improve because, again, older tax returns are still taking, especially anything with complications, can take 9 months to a year, if not longer, where we might have to bring in taxpayer advocate, etc., and fight it, just like I mentioned in my earlier example. Better call centers. Yet to see that. If anything, it's gotten worse in my opinion. But again, to be fair to the IRS, they just might need time to train people, get better things. But again, just answering the phone. And again, someone had the bright idea to add extra layers of bureaucracy to the IRS. So you're streamlining when you first called in, the first people that you talk to usually could do something, set up a simple installment agreement. Now, most of them can just give information. They're less trained. They don't know what they're doing. And even if you can get through, they're less informed. And the IRS has created extra layers of bureaucracy. Now you have a special compliance division. It's absolutely useless. There's no reason for it. There's no reason that people in collections can't do anything that's done in special compliance. And when we get there, they're not more informed. They're not better trained than collections. So again, the IRS has created new programs to try to improve things and just made things harder. They're harder to deal with. They're harder to communicate with. And then here's one thing that is a good thing. Office availability. And this has been a tool that I've used for difficult cases where I don't know what to do, don't know where it's going. I don't know where in the IRS bureaucracy I need to send this information. So when you get a hard knock case, and it's not an overly complicated case that you know is just going to take time, it's a case where, again, there's some mystery to it. Last case I took there was a Guam tax return with a 1099. And it was a mess. Again, Guam has its own form of tax return. So we went in and we got the information we needed. It was actually very helpful. So there's an appointment line at the IRS to schedule an appointment at a tax center closest to you. Here's the number. It's 844-545-5640. Now, this appointment line is where you schedule an appointment. It could be a month or two out, but be patient. If you go in there, and if you don't understand what's going on, it might very well help to take a tax professional with you. I've gone to these appointments, a few times. I don't do it often because usually, we have that information. But on thorny issues, really difficult audits, where you just can't connect to somebody, you can either use taxpayer advocate or use the appointment line where you get to go in and talk to a person, and usually they're fairly well informed. They're fairly well trained, and they if they can't fix it, they know who can. So again, I would highly suggest this is a good tool to use, is the appointment line 844-545-5640. Now, because I don't go that often myself, I don't know if they've become more available since COVID. I've used it post-COVID and pre-COVID. And for a while, it was actually very easy to get into them, and then people started hearing about it, so the time's backed up. But again, I do think that's a good thing that they're trying to improve in-person office availability across the country. A lot of people are afraid to go and talk to the IRS, but sometimes they're not there to collect from you. When you go talk to them, they're there to help you. I've never seen them say, well, we're going to set a deadline, It can trigger that. But usually, from what I've seen, every time I go in, they're there to help answer questions and guide taxpayers in the right direction. Now, one improvement at the IRS, and they don't always have this on their phone system, is a callback feature. So if you call and the IRS lines are just backed, or depending on the department, that they've started to do this, and states have been doing this for quite some time, where if their hold time is too ridiculous, California's been doing this for quite some time. You can always choose to get a callback. So you don't have to sit there on hold forever. You just have your phone on you. So you go about your day, and then they'll call you. And usually they call a couple times. And if you don't answer about 2 to 3 times, then you've got to call back again. But this can be a very handy feature for people that are busy, you're doing stuff, you don't want to just sit there on hold for hours and hours on end, which is tedious. And again, when you don't even know if they're going to pick up your call or if you're just going to get disconnected. So the callback feature, I think, is a helpful feature. We do use it regularly. Again, it's I think that is an improvement. So I do see the IRS trying to make some improvements to improve customer service. It's just they've got a steep hill to climb. And I'm going too slow to cover all this information. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about going digital. I think it's kind of a mixed record so far. The IRS Commission, of course, touts this as a huge success, and I do see some successes already. IRS.gov, that's going to be the big one. Do you have an account on IRS.gov? If you don't, you should. I think this is one of the biggest improvements the IRS has made to help taxpayers get good information. I talked to someone just yesterday, and he already had an IRS.gov account. He said, I've already pulled all my transcripts. He's already got his account up. He doesn't know exactly what to do with them, but he has his transcripts. He has, wedged income information. He has a wealth of information at his fingertips there, and he knew he was overwhelmed. And this is a very smart individual. He's an attorney, but he contacted us. I'm like, great, you have that information? Send it all to us. We'll jump on this and start your case right away. So he was able to look at his balances, see what's going on, and be better informed. So I want to talk about, and I might have to get to this after this next break, a big change that the IRS is making that I think is amazing. I think is really good. So, and again, some of these price changes haven't taken place yet. But I'm going to talk about a good thing that the IRS is moving to take, and also something very bad that they're introducing using digital means that include AI, so artificial intelligence. And that can be an oxymoron in itself. So if it's not very intelligent, if it's artificial, and it's kind of taking, in my opinion, a club and just smashing at things and forcing more and more taxpayers to have to get representation, to have to figure out what in the world the IRS is coming after them for. And it largely hits the middle class, and it hurts a lot of people. But again, I've got about 20 seconds, but we'll be talking about this after this last break and wrapping up through this. A lot of information here, a lot of things that can help you. And again, we'll be right back after this short commercial break. And again, if you want to read this article, I'm going to, it's just on the irsnewsroom.com, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back here to finalize things and wrap up talking about this speech by the IRS Commissioner that was just given yesterday, talking about better online notifications. So I think this is amazing. What he mentions in this talk, where the IRS is going, and I think it's really, I think it's a brilliant way to do this. So again, I'm not a fan of the IRS in most cases, but you got to give credit where it's due. In this segment, what he was talking about was addressing scams, helping people, one, directing them to IRS.gov, which is, I think, one of the best things that they've done recently. Yes, you have to do the face scan, and you have to pretty much, I think it's a little over the top in that area, but it would be devastating for people to go in and have their identity stolen through IRS.gov. So knock on wood, so far that hasn't happened, and hopefully the IRS has that secure. Again, if they get like face scans, taxpayers, plus all the other information the IRS has, I don't trust the government to keep information secure. I really don't. They've had so many hacks of the IRS system. But I see what they're trying to do. And as long as they can protect that information, this can be very helpful. So what he was talking about in his speech was their goal is to make it so that you can go directly to irs.gov and you'll have either a green or a red banner. Green, so anybody that gets a notice, a scary letter, a threatening letter, someone calling them claiming to be the IRS, you can go directly to irs.gov and you'll see, are there any issues? Are there any problems? You can see it very quickly, very efficiently, and you can tell very quickly if the scammers are full of baloney or if a letter is legitimate or not. So you can go on there and you can see the IRS letters that have been sent to you as well. So part of this, and this is why I do promote this, I do think this is a great thing. You can go in there and you can get a good idea of what's going on, and going directly to the source, irs.gov, is what scammers try to avoid. Because anytime they go to the federal government and they put their fingerprints all over something, it's much easier for the IRS to do that instead of calling, texting people directly. So the IRS almost never calls, doesn't text. And so when you get these alerts, you can go to irs.gov and they're going to try to make it, they haven't put this in place yet, but they're trying to make it more user-friendly, where you can just get online, check your irs.gov account, and see what's truly going on. Now, a lot of these scammers, they're vague. They say you have a tax debt. They don't say if it's from the state or from the IRS. It should be clear from the letter who the tax debt is owed to and for what. Now, reading IRS and tax letters is like reading Greek. I get it. People look at court documents, legal documents, forms, and their eyes go like, oh my goodness, what is this? That's why at Guardian Tax Law, we provide a free service. Anybody out there, if you get a scary letter or a threatening letter and you don't know what it means, we'll review it for free. Or if you just have a question, give us a call at 520-485-7371, or you can email us at info@guardiantaxlaw.com. The reason we do this is to help people avoid scams, avoid problems, and I think anything the IRS does to help clarify this is very commendable. Good for the IRS. I think there's a lot of improvement here and they're trying to make these improvements to address these scams, to help people when you have questions. Oh my goodness, what is this? Go to irs.gov. Check it out. It's harder to get a hold of the states. The states don't have this plan in place. They don't have a national website like this where you can access your information. You have to call, you have to wait. But anytime there's a scam, go directly, call the source directly. Do not depend on whatever's being told to you over the phone, any high pressure cells. I hope this helps people avoid scams. The problem is there's so much money in it. And my big fear is that they are so sophisticated, it's very possible that they get bold enough to attack the IRS directly. We'll see what happens there. But again, I think it's a good plan. The other big thing that the IRS is promoting, artificial intelligence. Now, what are they using artificial intelligence for? And they're putting a lot of resources into this, is to find tax dodgers. Find people that haven't filed tax returns, are hiding assets. And so there's this program, and it's how it's programmed, goes in and targets people with certain assets. And one of the things that they like to tout is, people with corporate jets, we're going to go after them. So the vast majority of people said, oh yeah, go after the people with corporate jets. I don't have a corporate jet. Go after them all you want. The problem is, it's not just people with corporate jets. This is where it becomes politics. And this whole thing, again, it's very common for politicians to say, we're just targeting the rich. What ends up happening is they target the middle class. I spoke to someone yesterday, struggling business owner, 80 employees. They have high revenue, but they have high costs too. And the boss told his managers that, look, I will always make sure my employees get paid. I will never shortchange my employees. But because of that mentality and not taking harder decisions sooner, he now is in a huge hole with the IRS, and his whole business is threatened. So unfortunately, when you tax people with money, when you tax business owners, when you go after that, you end up hurting not just the business owner, but all the people employed there. And so that's why when I can save a business, it really does. It's what really brings us joy, because we're not only keeping the business owner in business, but all of the employees. So using AI is, I don't trust it. I wouldn't trust it if I were you. Again, it has been manipulated in the past by Google and other things. So AI, I don't. It's been used for many of the wrong reasons, to go after people politically, to target. Again, it's how it's written and how it's used by the IRS higher administration. And they always claim that it's going to target the rich. There was one higher up IRS official, I even talked about the video where they try to chase him down. He admitted, had a moment of frankness, and admitted that the IRS has no way to just target people making over $400,000 a year. They don't. They just look off of tax returns and assume based off the tax returns that, hey, this is a high income earner. But most of these programs, they ignore that. They're increasing collections there. And what I'm seeing in reality is that these audits are not just hitting the rich. They're not just hitting the middle class. They're often hitting people that are struggling to get by. And it's really nuts how they're going after this. And it's not targeted. There's no way for them to really truly do that. So this is where it's hurting real people across all the classes. So again, it's not just hitting people with corporate jets. And so that's a concern. So one of the facts that he brags about, and maybe that's not the next way to say it, one of the facts he highlights with this new AI is they have started 125,000 new audits using artificial intelligence. And why they say that is a good thing, they're going after everybody. And it's not just bad actors, it's people that have legitimate businesses that have tried to do everything right. And I've had people where they did everything right, or they thought they did, but then someone comes in with a microscope and finds, oh, well, you missed this, this, and this, those things they didn't even know about. They are increasing, I forget what they call them, but it's a form of audit. This has been around forever, but they've vastly increased in how often they're using this audit, where they go line by line. There's nothing wrong. They're not alleging that anything's wrong to start, but if you get chosen for this kind of audit, it is known as the audit from hell, because they go line by line and question everything, and you have to prove up everything. You're supposed to keep those receipts. You're supposed to keep all of that. And if you don't have it, whatever you don't have it, have proof for, it gets disallowed. Again, there is some negotiation in there, but again, it is something you don't want to be caught on. We have clients that are dealing with those kinds of audits. And how do you protect yourself from those kind of audits? It's just based on this AI. It's based on these programs, and we don't know exactly how they work, or who's behind pulling the levers and telling AI how to go about and do this. So that's my concern with AI. I praise them on improving IRS.gov, getting more information out there to help people avoid scams. It's amazing. AI is a different matter. I don't trust it. I don't think this is a good thing, and I think it's hitting people all across the board. Now, I'm going to have mixed reactions to the last thing you focused on, and this is fairness in the system. Fairness in the system can be measured many different ways. So he went in and they did a review of how the IRS is performing, and they said that there was a huge racial disparity targeting African Americans, that in general they were 3 to 5 times more likely to be audited. Now on its face, that does sound like discrimination. I would ask why. What are the root causes? How do we improve things? And so they are trying to improve information, but at the same time, they adjusted their audits and they're adjusting their formulas to not target African Americans as much, rather than getting at the root cause and education and help people improve. They're just not targeting them as much. Which, again, I'm not for them on targeting any group or whatever, but again, we see this with affirmative action a lot. The Supreme Court has recently struck it down in American universities, where they change the formula based on race. And what happens is that they target other groups instead. So on one hand, I'm all for fairness in the system. He didn't have a lot of information. He didn't share a lot. He just said, hey, here's an issue. So what do? We change the formula, so we're just not targeting African American businesses or individuals as much as we used to. Very little information about it. I do think we should be aware of disparate impacts on communities. That's one of the reasons I do this show, is to get information out there to help people. And so overall, the IRS should be trying to be fair. Overall, they should be trying to get more information out there to help people. And I do see that they're trying in many ways. So I want to give the IRS credit for that and the Commissioner credit for that. Not everything they're doing you can take at face value. So if you're listening to, I don't listen to the State of the Unions from either party. And I'm a political junkie. I have very strong opinions. But I don't listen to them from either party, because you're hearing the rose-colored information from both parties. And if you've noticed where I cite my news sources, I take it from both sides, the right and the left. And so I try to create a balanced picture to see what's going on. So, and to help better inform myself so I can help others and serve my clients better. I do want to jump back to the first thing. There have been some updates about the Baltimore Bridge collapse. So this is an update thing. It's expected to be a mass casualty event. You can go online. You can actually watch a video showing the bridge collapsing. There are 8 workers on the bridge at the time. 2 have been recovered. But again, it's kind of some horrific images out there. Again, it's kind of scary. I'm going to go ahead and screen share as we close out. This is just an article from Fox News, but I'm pretty sure you can pull this information up anywhere. So again, the Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed. You can watch the video of it collapsing. But again, these are just some pictures showing the bridge, utterly demolished. 1.6 miles of the bridge collapsed, as you can see there in that picture. So again, be mindful of what the people that are involved. If you're in that area, avoid it at all costs. And again, this is a pretty big issue here. So again, I don't think any of the crew members were hurt. But again, be very mindful of that and pray for the people involved. So, and again, there were about 20 vehicles that went into the river, 1:30 in the morning. So anyway, I'm going to stop sharing on that. Be mindful of what's happening in our communities. And if you are in that Baltimore area, again, this is probably going to impact you. Probably impact someone you know. So stay safe out there, people. Stay off your phones. Don't text and drive. Don't smoke and drive or drink and drive. And take care of yourself and your families. And again, we try to help you do that financially by giving you good information. So the topic for tomorrow, just want to touch on that real quick. We're going to talk about wills, trusts, and probate and how that affects taxes. So my goal is to have experts come to the show to talk about these issues as well. And there's a lot to talk about. So again, thank you for watching live on rebroadcast. Be safe out there, people, and I hope you have a great day. And we will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early, or tomorrow afternoon if you're watching on rebroadcast.